Hi, my name is Dylan Mann, and I'm going to be presenting about how pets in America have actually evolved and changed throughout the last couple hundred years. The word pet was actually used as a word by the early 1500s as a synonym for indulged child, kind of like how they are treated nowadays. Favorite was often used in writing as a placement for the word pet until it was widely used in the 19th century. Pets were definitely used for leisure time as they usually played with and enjoyed during people's free time. They were also a part of the social life of people, but usually only the wealthy would be the ones attending dog shows and having portraits made showcasing their purebred champion dogs. Pets, such as dogs, they even transitioned from combat animals during America's war to home-oriented animals, where they are now being cherished for their feelings and personalities like other, albeit smaller, people, just like with my dog, Cooper here. Starting off with the Victoria era, here we can see the earliest known adaptation about how pets often reflected the prosperity of their owners. This was really only seen as wealthier families imported important breeds from other countries into the US, which was very expensive, and they would then breed these own animals in order to make more of a profit. The wealthy were also one of the only ones to attend dog shows, as they saw that their imported breeds had to be showcased. Um, until then, having a purebred dog did not promote the same reflection of prosperity as it did during right now or during the 20th century. Until then, most dogs were mixed breed, and this was because the AKC, the American Kennel Club, only started registering breeds in 1884. So having a purebred in the 1850s wasn't as meaningful uh, as it is today. One of the best ways to showcase your well-fed, pampered dog in the Victorian era was actually through portraits. Initially, portraits were mainly reserved for family members to preserve the history of their family for posterity. These paintings were rare and really only done by the middle class and upward, as the price to create one of these portraits was very high. And because of the steep price, paintings of pets were even more scarce. However, once oil paints became more widely available, paintings of people became more widespread and available to the lower class. Yet, only the wealthy were actually asking for portraits of their pets, which meant that having one in your house at the time identified you as being more well off and having more disposable income. As having a purebred started carrying more weight, more and more richer families wanted to showcase their economic status through these expensive and rare pet portraits. Now, talking about neutering. It was actually rare to sterilize a pet as it was expensive due to the limited number of doctors knowing about small pet anatomy. Most doctors were actually focused on larger animals such as horses or farm animals. So this limited the neutering of pets to solely richer families. Unfortunately, poorer families had to drown the newborns of their pets as they couldn't afford neutering or supplies for every newborn that was in a litter, especially for cats, as they usually produced lots of offspring, roughly two to all the way up to 10, while dogs usually produced around 5 to 6. During this era, dogs were actually shown to be more disproportionately male, most likely due to the drowning of females in order to keep the better looking and more fit males. During the Civil War, pets were actually providing solace and comfort for the soldiers so far from home, and some of them even shared a portion of the soldiers' rations, which really shows how much they meant to their mental well-being and morale in the battlefield. As you can see in this quote, almost every company during the time had a pet of some kind to keep their mind calm, even though they were not supposed to have them at all. After the war, exotic dogs were usually kept as souvenirs of war, and what we'll see is that there was actually a golden age of pet keeping shortly after the Civil War ended. After the Civil War, the Gilded Age had started, and this is where almost every family fed their pets table scraps, as commercial pet food wasn't commercially available at the time. Poorer families also bathed their pets with homemade soap too, as commercial pet products were just beginning to be invented and sold. However, it wasn't really until after the prosperous era after World War II that families would actually widely adopt commercial pet products such as good soap, flea protection, and food in order to help with their daily pet care routine. If a dog or cat was seen as malnourished, it could be elaborated that their owners were actually just as malnourished as they were being fed the same scraps as their owners. So poor pets actually roam the streets at night, killing mice and eating leftover garbage, while middle-class pets usually stayed inside and thrived on the same plain food as their owners that they usually made in stews. One of the best ways to differentiate owners was from their choice of dog houses or the type of beds that their pet actually slept in. Richer families had pillowed oriental beds inside of elaborate dog houses, shown here in this picture off to the right, while lower class pets usually slept on beds made from some sort of material like wicker, or they just had no bed at all and they were let to roam in the streets. Pets under wealthier and more educated family were actually usually named after historical figures which showed their classical education that poorer children were just simply not getting. During the time of World War I, dogs such as the terrier were actually used to locate wounded soldiers out in the field and notify military nurses when they have done so. Also during this time of war and the Great Depression, pets were eating much less, just like their families were, because most families simply could not afford to cook meals that produced any amount of leftovers. This in turn also slowed the progress made in commercial pet products during the Gilded Age, such as dog food and flea control, as it added to an already slim household budget. Dried dog food actually became popular during World War II. The rise of dog food in American society of war meant that it was actually now determined as a possible alternative to feeding dogs, as meat was rationed. This trend would actually continue into modern day, where it seemed that most dogs are actually fed from dried dog food. These world wars dramatically affected how pets were treated during that time, as rations were implemented so pets were being malnourished again, and soldiers had to leave their pets as they left home. However, Franklin D. Roosevelt talked about his famous dogs during his fireside chats, and the press published many pictures of them. These community pets, such as Roosevelt's, offered a connection between influential people and the poorer public to boost patriotism during a time of miserable war. As the war actually came to an end, the U.S. economy was booming, and purebred dogs were actually more sought after by the less wealthier communities, as consumer prosperity in America encouraged more spending in their social and leisure lives. Now we come to the collegiate boom of the 1980s and 90s, where people were actually beginning to attend colleges more and understand the world around them better. They started following and understanding more research done around the world, including research done about pets and the positive benefit on human health that they could actually bring. Research done during that time stated that pets could reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease and also promote psychological well-being in several communities. Euthanasia in shelters has actually decreased as pet adoptions have become more and more renowned, and sterilization has become more prominent and cost-effective now more than ever. Various reports have concluded that the drive to sterilize these pets and dogs and cats has been a major factor in the decline in shelter intake, and pet adoptions are still rising even to this day. In the modern era, pets are actually much larger and healthier than they have ever been, just as humans have actually become much healthier, stretching their life expectancy every single day. Three-fourths of Americans have pets, meaning that almost everyone can own whatever pet they desire, regardless of their economic status, which is much different than it was in the 19th century, where, for example, having a purebred almost guaranteed a higher economic rank. Almost most people today are living alone. Roughly 25% making rescuing an animal much more prominent than it ever has. Cats have even become more popular as they can live completely indoors with little need of cleaning like some dogs require. They're also more compatible with people. They work better with people with irregular work schedules, making them a great choice for the busy lives of Americans. However, now with the quarantine going on, more and more people are seeking pets as a means of keeping their minds occupied by imitating what the outdoors used to be like. Here are some of my references that I used, including the book Pets in America by Catherine Greer. I hope you enjoyed how pets have intertwined themselves into America's culture and economy. Thank you so much for listening. And finally, here's an example of how I usually spend most of my leisure time back at home now.